This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, mobile support. Souls Harbour expands its efforts to help the homeless. Interest rate cut. The Bank of Canada lowers its key interest rate to 3.25%. And international cuisine. A Sydney restaurant hopes to bring newcomers and locals together through food.
Rain, gusty winds, and mild temperatures tonight into Thursday. Then this front will have temperatures tumbling throughout the day on Thursday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. As the homeless crisis continues in Nova Scotia, many organizations are expanding their services to help more people in need. The Souls Harbour Rescue Mission's Soulsmobile van, which has basic supplies, is going to be on the road more this winter. As Gareth Hampshire tells us, it is a lifeline for those trying to survive in the city's tent encampments.
This is the Soulsmobile, equipped with warm clothes and snacks and other basic supplies like toothbrushes for people living outside. That was estimated to be nearly 1,300 people in Halifax at the last count.
It's very important to bring hope to those that are feeling hopelessness.
The charity Souls Harbour Rescue Mission is responding with increased hours on the road, visiting encampments to check on people.
To try and help them navigate through their situation and help them out of the situation that they are in.
Jarvis Eastman has been working with the community for years. Today he's trying to help John Marangoni, who's been living at this Dartmouth encampment for 6 months.
It's rough. It's in warmer weather. It's different. It's a lot simpler. But once it gets cold, it's cold.
He's trying to find a shelter bed, but first Marangoni needs dry clothes and something to eat.
Here we have some socks that we're giving out here. Actually, these came from Mary Queen of Socks.
There is a mixture of rain and snow today, so his feet are cold.
Once your shoes get wet, your socks get wet, everything gets wet. It's soaking wet out here.
He's been on the phone with shelters, but has disappointing news.
Yeah, so there's nothing available right now for shelter space, but tomorrow I know there will be, okay?
He's heading back to his tent until tomorrow, but he has new warm clothes, food, and a sleeping bag.
We do know that there's a bed space that's going to be saved for him to be able to get him in there tomorrow.
The province says shelters and transitional and supportive housing providers report occupancy levels consistently over 90% or higher, and is why it says it has been making big investments, including adding about 200 shelter beds and nearly 700 new supportive housing units, with more of both coming in the next 2 months. But the Soulsmobile team says Marangoni will not have to wait that long, as they'll be back at the encampment to take him to a shelter. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
And we have an update on John Marangoni. Souls Harbour went back to his tent today to offer to bring him to a shelter. However, he told them he now has an offer to stay with family in Cape Breton and is planning to travel there tomorrow. Meanwhile, the province has also provided more information about its plans to create more spaces in the next 2 months. There are going to be 40 more beds in Halifax for winter sheltering, 85 new shelter village units split between Clayton Park and Dartmouth, and 180 supportive housing units across the province. Premier Tim Houston and his new cabinet will be sworn in during a ceremony in Halifax tomorrow. But in a break from long-standing tradition, the ceremony is private and reporters are not allowed to attend. Michael Gorman reports.
The province announced today that tomorrow's swearing-in ceremony would be a closed event and that reporters would not be allowed to attend. Although the event will be live-streamed and one TV camera will be allowed inside to gather footage, there will be no reporters in the room. There have also been no arrangements announced to make new cabinet ministers available for questions. The explanation for this break from the normal procedure? Limited capacity at the Halifax Convention Centre. NDP leader Claudia Chender says she doesn't buy it. Chender says this is the latest example of a PC government that looks to avoid public scrutiny and accountability. Interim Liberal leader Derek Mumberket says he can't understand why the Tories would not want reporters there on what is normally a happy day for any government. He and Chender both say it does not bode well for the rest of the PC mandate. Houston's first swearing-in ceremony in 2021 was during the COVID-19 pandemic, so gathering in the room was limited. Reporters were allowed in the building, however, and given access to cabinet ministers after the ceremony. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
Halifax's Auditor General is calling on the municipality to do a better job of advancing diversity and inclusion in its operations. Andrew Atherton provided 8 recommendations in his report. The report credits HRM for carrying out a number of actions that align with its own diversity and inclusion framework, but it also raises issues around gaps in the system, how it could be more effective.
What was missing is that central oversight, the monitoring to ensure that the right work is being done or that the best work is being done, and the performance measures to assess whether that work is accomplishing what the municipality wants it to accomplish.
The report also found not all new hires are completing diversity and inclusion training. HRM management accepted the recommendations, and the committee voted to have an action plan in 6 months. Well, Gray continues to be the theme of our weather here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, rain, drizzle, fog. Boy, the fog was pea soup thick at times today and continues tonight. And temperatures on the rise, and we're into the double digits overnight tonight, even some low teens possible. And that's going to be the case even into early Thursday morning. So a very mild start to the day. Those periods of rain working back into the province from west to east late overnight, early Thursday, along with this cold front. And the cold front, it's going to be really sharp. We're going to go from the double digits and even by noon falling into the mid-single digits for the Tri-County area. Halifax starting to fall around that midday time period as well, as the skies clear behind the front. And we're going to be watching that front move from west to east. And as it departs and the rain departs, the winds will be shifting and easing as well. We'll time that out in just a sec. But here, there you can see by 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, certainly back down to reality here with those low single digits. In terms of those winds ramping up already in through the west and southwest. And yeah, they're really going to be gusting. Widespread gusts tonight, 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour with some gusts to 90 possible, especially in the Tri-County area along the coast. And can't rule out an isolated gust to 90 Bay of Fundy and along that Atlantic coastline as well. As we work our way into the overnight and early morning hours of Thursday, we're going to be seeing those strongest winds pushing up towards Cape Breton. And there's the shift to southwesterlies, which will be still gusty, 50, 60, even 70 along parts of the coast, but not quite as strong as what we'll see through the overnight and early Thursday. And those winds will continue to shift out from west to east as we move throughout the day on Thursday. And that very gusty southwesterly wind ushering in that cooler air will ease into the later stages of Thursday. For Friday into the weekend, an area of high pressure moving in, which is going to keep things bright, but certainly keep things chilly. All those details coming up with your 7-day forecast, Amy.
All right. Thanks for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, the Bank of Canada has made another big cut to its key interest rate. It is the 5th consecutive one since June, but it comes with a warning of uncertain times ahead. Peter Armstrong explains.
The Bank of Canada is trying to thread a particularly slim needle. It wants to get rates lower, but it doesn't want markets to freak out. So once again, it cut 50 basis points, but it added this caveat.
With the policy rate now substantially lower, we anticipate a more gradual approach to monetary policy.
The question is, what does gradual really mean?
Well, we've just cut by 50 basis points at the last 2 meetings. So more gradual is more gradual than that.
Tiff Macklem's answer is deliberately vague because he sees what you see. Per capita GDP has fallen 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate is rising. Economists say gradual doesn't mean the rate-cutting cycle has come to an end.
Canadians are going to see even more rate cuts ahead.
Canadians have been clobbered recently. Inflation drove up prices. A slowing economy is eating into economic confidence. So even if those 50 basis point cuts are behind us, economists believe rates need to come down to help navigate the stormy months and years ahead.
RBC sees the Bank of Canada cutting rates down to 2% by the end of next year, believing that the economy is going to need more than just neutral, but a little extra support over that horizon.
That's welcome news to variable rate mortgage holders.
It probably dropped by about $250, $300 a month, so it's definitely a relief there.
Roman Oshipkov saw his mortgage in Red Deer nearly double when rates took off. That extra money helps, but costs are up across the board.
Fuel costs are up. Cost to food for kids and formula and diapers and all that stuff is up. So it's really not that you can buy extra stuff.
And now the economy is facing new threats from incoming U.S. President Donald Trump and his proposed tariffs. And we still don't know what will be targeted, by how much, or how Canada may respond.
So it is not just a cloud of uncertainty, but a very pernicious fog over the entire visibility of the Canadian economy.
The Bank of Canada meets again on January 29th, just a week after the new U.S. president takes office. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
DFO is changing some regulations for Elver fishers in the Maritimes, setting up requirements for two kinds of licenses. Under the regulations, there would be a license required to possess Elvers, and a separate export license will be required for people who export the baby eels. The changes were described yesterday at the Elver Advisory Committee meeting in Halifax, where officials proposed a tentative opening date of March 1st for the fishery. The department is proposing a redistribution of the annual catch that would create about 150 new commercial license holders. A new documentary about the life and murder of a Mi'kmaq activist launched in Canada today on Disney+. Annie Mae Pictou Aquash was the mother of two from Sabaganagati First Nation in Nova Scotia.
It's a story about a woman who went up against a giant.
Aquash became a member of the American Indian Movement, AIM, and participated in its most notable protests, including the Wounded Knee armed standoff in 1973. She was executed in 1975, and two AIM members were convicted of her murder decades later. The four-part documentary, Vow of Silence, The Assassination of Annie Mae, premiered earlier this month in the United States on Hulu. Well, a new dining space that features a rotating group of international cooks has opened in downtown Sydney. It's known as the Whale House. Organizers hope it brings newcomers and locals together through a love of food. Erin Potty reports.
2, 3. The Whale House Bistro in downtown Sydney is named after two large sea creatures seen painted on the side of its building. Inside is a wave of meals from local cooks, many of whom are newcomers. Among them is Chin Zhu. She moved to Cape Breton 2 years ago.
Chinese is a very old country, and we have too much traditional culture and food. And dim sum is one of the traditional food. So, to be honest, I would like to share that to everyone here.
The idea for the bistro came after several successful food markets organized by the Multicultural Association of Cape Breton. Ocean Lee is the nonprofit group's vice president. He says local newcomers have wanted a place to share their food and meet other people living on the island.
That's when we thought to ourselves, well, we need to have a commercial kitchen. So then we thought of the idea of having a pop-up bistro where each day we would have a new vendor to sell and celebrate their cultural dishes.
Lee says the rotating group of vendors plans their own meals, buys ingredients, and keeps the profit from their sales. Meanwhile, the association charges them for using the space, with the money put back into running the bistro.
I think here is a very nice location and a very good advertising for my business. And I think it will affect more and more new customers, know us.
Among the cooks using the space is Pam Steele of Sydney. She's been making Mediterranean dishes for 20 years. She says the bistro offers her flexibility.
I don't have to feel the weight of all of the bills, all of the overhead. I don't have to do any paperwork.
Part of the purpose of the bistro is to offer cooks a way to test demand for their products and businesses. Lee hopes these experiences will lead to more local businesses getting off the ground. Erin Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
There's a look at traffic going through the Armdale roundabout. Ryan is up next with his weather forecast. We'll see you in just a few minutes. All right, do you kind of feel like you're back in Newfoundland?
Yeah, I do. It's been a decade there, and there were many of days like this, so which just so foggy.
RDF?
Rain, drizzle, and fog. And yeah, it's so common there. There's an acronym for it. But and listen, that was the day today. That's what it's going to be tonight and tomorrow morning as well. But we're going to see some clearing, and so the sun will start to come through, even for the western half of the province tomorrow.
Be welcome.
Be welcome for sure. Have a look at, well, first let's start with the warnings, which are in place for the Tri-County area, and also a lace wet wind warning in effect. These are the areas that are best chance to see some gusts exceeding 90 kilometers per hour. Not there yet, but you can see the current winds are picking up in through the Tri-County area, sustained 37 in Yarmouth, 30 in Westport, gusting to 41 there. So really just getting started in terms of where we will be in a couple of hours. And you can see into the double digits already. Canso, downtown Halifax, excuse me, and the Tri-County area, all into the double digits, and Cheticamp. 2 in Ingonish Beach, 14 in Cheticamp. What's going on here? Well, we get the winds downsloping from the Cape Breton Highlands. That warms them. Yes, we are looking at temps a lot milder there than the rest of the island. Now, as we look at the satellite radar picture, so you can see we've been seeing the rain across Cape Breton. That is kind of clearing out. Another lighter kind of band that's been working its way through the province today is now pushing its way up towards the north and east. Most of the action here is still back down to the south and west in some heavy rain flooding up the eastern seaboard. Much needed rain. They have been dry here as well. And that is all going to be pushing in for us as we move through tonight. Much colder air spilling in on the other side of this front. How cold? Well, minus 28 in Winnipeg right now, minus 21 in Regina, 2 on the plus side in Calgary, minus 10 in Edmonton, 9 in Vancouver. And you can see that colder air sweeping all the way down to the U.S., just 8 in Atlanta. That is chilly for them, 18 in Orlando, 27 in Miami. Okay, closer to home. Let's time it out with the timeline. And you can see the forecast model doing a pretty good job with that first push that does move off into the north and east tonight, and then quiet for a good chunk of the early overnight. The fog still going to be pea soup thick. And then we're looking at tomorrow morning, that rain redeveloping along the front, which is going to be working its way in from west to east. And you can see how mild it will be. It's going to be a tough one for dressing the kids tomorrow morning. They're going to go outside and, want obviously rain jackets. You're going to need that, but feel like, well, we don't need the toque or the gloves or anything like that, but maybe throw them in the backpack tomorrow, because note as we move our way into the afternoon, temperatures are going to be much cooler on the other side, and the wind is going to be gusty as well. So it's going to be feeling even cooler than what you're seeing here in the low single digits. So if they're spending any outside time at all after school, might want the warmer toque on for sure. Temperatures, you can see 12 to 14 degrees for highs in Cape Breton tomorrow. We'll be back in the 11 to 13 range across the eastern parts of the mainland, Guysborough and Antigonish County, into Pictou County and Tatamagouche. We're looking at temperatures 13 to 14 for highs tomorrow. And note, I did put the sun icons on here with that gradual clear out for the late afternoon for the Halifax area, and then into the Truro region as well. The Valley, Tri-County, and South Shore will most certainly see the sun breaking through on the other side of that front. One more time, timing these winds out, and yes, it will be a rockin' tonight to the winds from the south, gusting 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour. That'll be the widespread gusts. And then we're looking at those gusts that will approach and exceed 90 Tri-County area, Atlantic coastline, Northumberland shore. These are going to be the best chances of seeing those gusts pushing up towards warning criteria, and then at Cape Breton as well. And there's that lighter but still gusty wind in on the other side of the front. Note the temperatures on Friday. We're near the freezing mark. High pressure settling into the region, and so we do have sunshine on tap, which is great, but it is going to be pretty chilly. Saturday, Sunday, again, things kind of remaining a little on the icy side after all that wet weather. Amy.
All right, something to watch for. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, a campaign is underway to educate parents about the risks of early smartphone use for children. A campaign is underway to urge parents to delay giving their kids smartphones until high school. Unplugged Canada is raising the alarm about the impact excess screen time can have on children. Jenna Post started the Nova Scotia chapter of the movement. So why did you feel the need to get involved?
Well, as a mother of 2 young children, this is something to me that I've been passionate about, especially this last year. I read the book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, and that kind of just lit a fire in me that I wanted to help educate and share this message more about the impact of social media and smartphones on our children. There's a lot more data and research coming out now showing us what it can do to these young minds. And so I just wanted to try to help make some change in my community in Nova Scotia, try to help make an impact on my kids and the kids in our area. And it's something that's been just something of a passion of mine, given my sort of experience in the technology space. I've been working and building in this for the last almost 20 years, so I understand the amazing benefits it can offer. But I also know that with all the new data we now have after 10 years of kids having smartphones, what the impact is having on their development and their mental health.
So what has the reaction to this campaign been so far locally?
Locally, it's been extremely positive. Honestly, every parent I've talked to, it's not an easy conversation always to bring up because you just don't know where people are at in this topic. But you know, with this year, there's been a bit of a changing tide with the introduction of the cell phone policies across the province. More people are talking about it, and more people are now seeing the positive benefits of when you start to reduce or limit the access to smartphones for young children. And so I think people are just starting to see the positive side of this, and the reaction so far has been really positive. And just, you know, trying to get the message out there is more the difficult part, but those who actually have, you know, I've had a conversation with are really responsive to it. I mean, there's always questions people have and sometimes some concerns, but overall it's been extremely positive.
Well, what about the contention that kids should have smartphones as a way to stay connected to their parents? You know, if there's an emergency, they can call for help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a comment I hear a lot. I think there's a little bit of a misconception that you need a smartphone to be able to stay connected with your child. You know, there's lots of alternatives now out there for parents of a more basic phone. You know, there's nothing wrong with giving them a phone to be able to communicate and message with friends and family. And in many cases, that's really necessary. But I think we've just kind of made the default to think that we have to give it a smartphone. There's lots of more options. There's the pinwheel phone that's come out in Canada recently. There's just more basic phone options available that you can still communicate and connect, but you don't need to give them full access to some of the applications that are designed to be addictive, and access to some, you know, open web that really there's a lot of harmful content that they can get access to unintentionally many times.
Now, you had mentioned the new rules around cell phones in the classroom, but you don't think that goes far enough.
Well, I think it's a first step. You know, much of what Jonathan Haidt shared in that book is that was one of the recommendations is we do need phone-free schools to help make some change on this phone-based childhood that now kind of exists in our society. But one of them is, you know, delaying smartphones and social media until kids are older, like a little bit more into high school when they're more developmentally ready. It's not about completely banning technology or not having any of that be a part of your life. There's some incredible benefits to it. It's just introducing it at an age appropriate and developmentally appropriate time, and being aware of the risks if you do introduce that earlier, because the complexities of trying to manage all of the parental controls on an iPhone, trying to give to your child, is actually really difficult for many parents, and they're not built for parental controls. They're actually more built for adults. So I think that that's where it's one step, and I think there's just more that we need to do as a society to sort of change these norms, and one way is to just delay.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have an information session coming up next month. What do you hope to achieve there?
My hope is just to reach as many parents as I can to just help inform them. You know, everyone's going to make a decision based on what's best for their family. But I'm just trying to help get the message out on this new information we now have on some of the impacts of devices at an early age, and just hope people can make an informed decision for their family if they're able to join and listen in and be open to that conversation.
And for folks who do, where would they go?
So I've got a website you can go to. It is, sorry, I'm gonna have to get that clear, but it's on an Eventbrite website that is with the Nova Scotia chapter of Unplug Canada. You can go to our socials as well and look for us there because we've shared all the information on there. But ideally, we're trying to register folks so that we know how many are coming in person. There's also a live stream available on Zoom that you can attend, in hopes of just reaching as many people across the province as possible.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, 4 days after the toppling of the Assad regime, deep uncertainty remains about what's next for Syria. Tens of thousands of people in Malibu, California remain evacuated from their homes as a wildfire burns out of control. Welcome back. Just days after the toppling of the Assad regime, Syria's transitional prime minister is calling on the millions who fled the civil war to come back home. But the unrest in the country is far from over. Israel has sent troops into southern Syria and launched dozens of airstrikes. CBC News senior international correspondent Margaret Evans has more from Damascus.
Well, Israel has said it is moving into, there's a buffer zone between the Syrian Golan Heights and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, and there's a buffer zone that has been manned by peacekeeping forces over the years. Israel has moved into that area and said that it's doing so to protect itself. It's worried, it says, about the potential of militant groups who still exist in pockets in Syria getting a hold of the big weaponry, the arsenal that the Syrian government had, including chemical weapons. They have been striking targets in Syria again and again and again, including the Syrian Navy along the coastline. The other big concern is the fighting in the north between Turkish-backed opposition groups and U.S.-backed Kurdish groups. Turkey believes that those Kurdish groups harbor separatists from Turkey who want to work towards Kurdish separatism or independence in Turkey. It is not. These two groups have clashed for a number of years. The Kurds have autonomy in the east, the south, the northeast of the country. They're going to want to hang on to that. They have been very instrumental in the defeat of ISIS, and as I said, they do have U.S. backing. We did hear that the clashes in one of the cities that had been held by the Kurds, Manbij, there's a ceasefire there, but it seems to involve the Kurds withdrawing. And Kurdish people in Aleppo and other parts north of Aleppo and armed fighters there did leave when the Turkish-backed opposition groups started to move their way. So, you know, it's a reminder that there are a lot of uncertainties still in this country.
That was the CBC's Margaret Evans reporting from Damascus. Palestinian officials are reporting dozens of deaths in Israeli airstrikes today in northern Gaza. Israel says it was targeting Hamas militants in the area. The news comes as the United Nations again raises concerns about Israel's handling of the war. The CBC's Tom Perry has more from Jerusalem.
The UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories once again has some harsh words for Israel.
I'm burdened by having to yet again explain the unbelievable amount of suffering and grief the Palestinian people have endured in the last year. For crimes, the member states have the clear responsibility of preventing, stopping and punishing, among which is genocide.
Israel has consistently denied committing genocide in its war in Gaza. It says that it's Hamas that launched a genocidal attack on October 7th, and it says Israel has been defending itself within the bounds of international law. Now, there has been a lot going on in Gaza today. Palestinian health officials say that 33 people were killed in northern and central Gaza, the majority of those in Beit Lahia, where it says 22 people, including women and children, were killed when the IDF hit a multi-story building. Now, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, told Reuters it was targeting Hamas, operating near a hospital there, and it disputes the numbers. We're also hearing reports today out of Nusrat, where Palestinian Civil Emergency Service there says at least 7 people were killed in airstrikes. So on the other side, we're hearing about 4 rockets coming out of Gaza. That doesn't happen as often anymore, but 4 rockets being fired out of Gaza, 2 being taken out by air defense, 2 landing in an open field, causing no injuries. The IDF, it's reported, has been telling people in the areas from where those rockets were launched to evacuate, and that often means that more airstrikes are on the way. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
A major wildfire fanned by strong winds continues to burn out of control in Southern California. But changing weather conditions may start bringing some relief. Steve Futterman is in Malibu with the latest.
Today, finally some good news, as for the first time, firefighters are beginning to get the upper hand on this blaze. Early this morning, some fresh new fighters. With tools in hand, their job today was to help establish a fire perimeter to stop the fire from spreading. Overnight, there were huge hotspots engulfing dry brush which hasn't burned in years. Water-dropping helicopters worked around the clock. And all this work paid off. This morning, fire officials announced the fire is now 7% contained. Not that much, but...
I mean, 7% is 7% than
better than yesterday. Obviously, the weather is cooperating. That plays a huge role in our containment efforts to get that fire line put in.
The winds haven't completely gone away, but they have greatly diminished. Still, the fire continues to grow, although much more slowly now.
This house is gonna go down, bro.
At times, the flames seem overwhelming. There has been damage to homes and other structures. The numbers, though, are quite low. And there have been some nervous moments.
Oh my God, I can smell the smoke.
For the unlucky ones, they have to now assess the damage.
Sparks and embers blowing everywhere, and you think the world's coming to an end.
Another sign that the worst may be over, today students at Pepperdine University were no longer required to shelter in place. With finally some containment and weather conditions improving, especially the winds, fire crews are more optimistic than ever that they are getting the upper hand. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Malibu, California.
A legal clock is running in one of the most high-profile murder cases in the U.S. in years. The man held in the killing of a U.S. health insurance executive faces a new deadline in his fight against the charges. These are new images of Luigi Mangione showing him at his time of arrest in a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. You can see him pulling down his mask at the request of police. His lawyer says Mangione will plead not guilty to murder and will fight the attempt to bring him to New York to face prosecution. His lawyer now has 2 weeks to file court documents to back up Mangione's claim he isn't the gunman. There are growing calls for more and better training for security guards following the death of a 20-year-old man in Edmonton. He was shot and killed just 3 days into the job. The CBC's Julia Wong has the story and a warning. Some of the images and details are disturbing.
Security camera video appears to show how quickly things escalated in this Edmonton apartment building last Friday, the last moments of Harshandeep Singh's life. 2 people, one with a gun, are seen approaching the 20-year-old security guard. Another security video appears to show he was pushed into a stairwell, then shot in the back. Both videos have been circulating on social media. Edmonton police say they are aware, but decline to comment. 2 people have been charged with first-degree murder.
It's unimaginable. It's it's not something that we can really fathom as how the family is going through this.
Singh was from India. He had been in Canada for 18 months and wanted to be a police officer. A family spokesperson said he had only been on the job for 3 days and wasn't even supposed to be working that day.
He was actually covering for someone on that 3rd day, and he wasn't originally scheduled to work.
Grieving relatives wonder why he was there.
Harshandeep was placed there, was deployed there with zero training, with no partner, no equipment to defend himself.
I can't sleep. I've been really thinking about the dangers of my job.
This security guard says he used to patrol the building where Singh was killed.
That building is bad. It is known for problematic issues. It is heartbreaking to know that that man died alone, and it could have been prevented.
If you're that new and by yourself in a high crime area, I think that's just unfortunately, a recipe for disaster.
In many provinces, you only need to do 40 hours of coursework to become a security guard, and it can be done online.
I would like to see more on-site drills, more on-site practice in that sense, giving guards a sense of what is it like to be stressed.
Community members are working together to return Singh's remains to his family in India. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
The victim of a home invasion in Ontario is telling a harrowing story about being put on hold when he called 911. He says it happened 4 times while his house was being ransacked, and he and his young daughter were held at gunpoint. The CBC's Farah Morali reports.
The frantic moments not long after an armed group allegedly broke into Theo Meadows' house.
So he stuck the gun at me through this hole here, actually put it through the broken glass.
Meadows met at our studios, still afraid to bring people into his home after what happened. That night, as the armed intruders smashed his window, he called for help.
I ran into my bedroom, Grabbed my phone. That was when I called 911 for the first time. And as soon as I put the call through, I got a please hold. It was like a pre-recorded like ringtone sort of thing. So it was just or OPP, please hold.
Meadows says he tried calling 911 twice more while the intruders were still in his home. Each time, he says, the same hold message. Meanwhile, the situation became even more frightening.
As I'm telling them where they can go to the closet to find anything valuable, my 5-year-old daughter opens her door and she comes out of her room in her nightgown, just like rubbing her eyes. And this guy takes the gun off of me and puts the gun right up to her head. It was kind of the most desperate, helpless feeling I've ever had. Like, that's kind of the only way to describe it. And the guy was standing right about here.
The whole ordeal, he says, over in minutes. Meadows says it wasn't until his 4th 911 call, after the group had left, that someone answered.
I mean, at this point, I've kind of completely given up on police response coming to help us, because it's like everything's done.
Emergency? Do you need police, ambulance, or fire?
CBC News has reported extensively on 911 wait times in the city of Toronto. Where Meadows lives is patrolled by Ontario Provincial Police, where 911 calls go to 4 call centres province-wide.
In a statement, the OPP said it couldn't comment on this case as it's an active investigation. When it comes to call centre staffing, it also wouldn't say anything, citing officer and public safety purposes. But it maintains that of the more than 1 million 911 calls it received last year, 75% were answered within 14 seconds. This advocate says 911 call center staffing remains a problem countrywide.
If we don't sort of take that step and start investing in our public safety communicators, the problem that you're seeing in parts of Ontario, it's not going to get better. And it's probably going to get worse.
While they were breaking in, there's my daughter's chalk set and sandcastle toys.
Meadows says he's sharing his story to push for changes to the service.
All I know is that on the worst day of my life, it didn't work at all.
Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
The two sides in the Canada Post strike appear further apart than ever. The company released a statement today saying the union's latest offer would add billions of dollars in unsustainable fixed costs. Stuck in the middle are many people anxiously awaiting essential documents, including social services checks and passports. Alexander Silberman reports.
My package was delivered to this very postal location.
Yi Ching Huang tracked her passport to this shuttered Toronto post office. It's stuck inside with no way to get it. And a trip for her wedding reception is just weeks away.
Yeah, it's devastating at this point.
Huang is a permanent resident with a Chinese passport that contains visas that are challenging to replace. And there's no resolution in sight after the latest proposal by the union, delivered Monday, was described as a setback by Canada Post.
I feel sorry for the workers. They have to go on strike at this point of year, but then it's also very frustrating for people like us waiting for important documents.
While Huang is currently out of luck, there are some options for Canadian passport holders. Service Canada has held about 185,000 passports since December 1st. They're available for pickup for an extra $20. But it's not just passports.
We think that all options should be in place.
While some federal benefits, including the Canada Pension Plan, are still being delivered, most provincial program checks need to be picked up. That's troubling to this advocate.
Certainly for people who have mobility issues or distance issues, it becomes a real barrier to getting what are absolutely necessary benefits for survival purposes.
Canada Post says mail stuck at distribution centers like this one will be delivered on a first-in, first-out basis when operations resume. But it adds Canadians will continue to feel the impact of the strike long after it's over. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
There are 18 months to go until Canada plays joint host to the Men's Soccer World Cup. And today we learned the hosts for the following two tournaments, one of them being something of a controversial pick.
The host of the FIFA World Cup 2034 will be Saudi Arabia.
The Saudi bid was the only candidate for 2034. It will be the second time a Middle East country will have hosted the World Cup. Qatar was the first 2 years ago. Amnesty International was quick to blast Saudi Arabia's selection, pointing to its human rights record. The hosting rights for 2030 were also awarded today, jointly to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. 3 games will also be played in South America. Canada's main stock index gained more than 150 points today after the Bank of Canada cut interest rates, while U.S. markets were mixed. Here's a look at where things closed.
This is Nova Scotia. And this is Nova Scotia on your smart TV because CBC News is now streaming local. Get local headlines, weather, and community stories, plus newscasts and live programming on your favorite connected device, all for free. It's called the CBC News Nova Scotia streaming channel. See your community on your connected TV and mobile devices. Your local news streaming channel, now available.
Yeah, so not the best weather, I guess you'd say, but there is hope on the horizon.
There's
right?
hope on the horizon, sunshine and clearing skies as we move through tomorrow afternoon. And then, the sunshine really in place Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Looking
On
at
a weekend,
yeah,
no doubt.
pretty nice
Okay.
stretch for sure. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day with some sunshine here. In this picture, we're going to zoom into Gates Mountain and a beautiful sun pillar.
Wow.
Yeah, fantastic
That is
shot here
neat.
from Sarah Chisholm. Thank you so much, Sarah. Sarah sent in quite a few pictures before, but this one, this is top of the list for sure with a nice sun pillar. Sarah, thank you so much. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Now, as we look at the wind again through this evening and into the overnight, note those strongest winds moving in from west to east through the overnight into tomorrow morning. We are looking at the potential for some power outages with these types of gusts. Widespread gusts in the 60, 70, 80 kilometer per hour range, and we will see some gusts likely exceeding that along exposed areas of the coast, particularly in through the Tri-County area where we do have a wind warning in place. It is gusty tomorrow from the west to southwest as we are going to be watching that wind shift. But not nearly as strong as they will be tonight. Note those temperatures, very mild to start the day tomorrow into the double digits, maybe even some low teens. And then as we work our way into tomorrow, the winds shift, the temperatures drop as the rain clears. And let's run this right out. And you can see for Friday morning, kind of still hovering right around the freezing mark and not really budging too much throughout the day on Friday. Temperatures basically hovering right near freezing, dropping below freezing for Friday night into Saturday morning and remaining below the freezing mark throughout the weekend. So some icy conditions possible after all that water.
Yeah, quite a change. Well, drive-through restaurants are known for their convenience. You know, get that double-double and away you go in your nice warm car or on your nice warm cow.
Yes, you heard that right. And if you happen to be in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, you might just see Kelly Landry riding her 8-year-old steer through the Tim Hortons. We'll let her tell you about it.
I have him since he was 1 week old. Animals are like men, they love food. You attract them by the belly, so yeah. All animals love sugars. I bought some Timbits and sometimes some donuts, some bread. I just order my stuff and go at the window, but this time I can't grab my stuff because he's too high, so I just told to the guy that keep my order, I will go inside and I will tie him to a pole. People come to take picture with him, pet that dog. Animals are a therapy, so when no one is there, your animals will always be there.
Yep, quite a ride.
Fantastic.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.